I've had a lot of people ask me what my most anticipated games of 2025 are, and typically I give them the same answer every time because there's a big four that I'm looking forward to this year, and those four games are shaping a lot of the content that I'm making in 2025. So we'll talk about what those big four are at the end of the video, but I realized that there are so many other games, some smaller games that I'm really looking forward to in 2025, and I figured why not make a video talking about all of those games, watch a couple of the trailers, and showcase some of the games that I'm most excited for coming this year. I've split it into a couple different categories. We've got roguelikes, we've got puzzle games, we've got food and farming, because I'm not really sure how I ended up having four different games that fall under food and farming in 2025. And then we have our big four that we're going to talk about in a little bit more detail. So without further ado, let's hop in. I'm unscripted, I'm a little chaotic. Let's check out some games. So starting off, we're going to take a look at some in the roguelike genre. Obviously, this is where most of my content gets made. I have a bunch of different roguelikes that I'm looking forward to, and a lot of them are actually coming in the beginning half of this year instead of the end half of this year, which is pretty exciting. To start out, we got Die in the Dungeon. A lot of you have already seen me play Die in the Dungeon multiple times on the channel this year. Well, and last year, but I did do a video on the channel this year because I already have a key. It's coming at the end of February. You can check it out, wishlist it right now, link in the description. It is a dice building roguelike. So you are going to be drafting dice to add to your deck and then using those dice in a kind of puzzly grid to maximize your damage, your block, and boosting your dice and doing permanent effects to your dice and all kinds of different mechanics that feels a lot like Slay the Spire when you start to play it. You realize how deep the strategy is despite having a lot of the gameplay impacted by dice rolls and randomness. It's a really delicate balance, and I think they knocked it out of the park with the full release. There's 3 different characters, there's a bunch of different enemies and bosses. Well worth a look when it releases. I think it's going to be probably one of the better roguelikes that releases this year. We also got StarVaders, which is a game that I have now played several of the demos of in the past as well, so you have likely seen this game before. The best that I can describe it is a deck-building tactics game where you are playing as a little spaceship and attempting to get rid of enemy spaceships and enemy aliens that are trying to attack you. But it's done in a really elegant deck-building tactics way where your cards are allowing you to move your ship and deploy attacks or deploy structures that will attack. Each of the characters plays very, very differently, and it's one of those games that is just super polished. Like, it excels at giving the player feedback for how best to perform all of their actions. It's a game that leaves all of the knowledge right there in front of you for you to make your decisions, and those decisions are not easy in the game. There's a lot of fun ways to break it, but it is still a very balanced game at its core, and I think that it's going to surprise a lot of people. I think that this is one where it could end up popping off and being crazy popular if it gets in the hands of the right people, because it does have that feeling of some of those like late 2010s roguelikes. You're like FTLs, you're Into the Breaches, where I feel like it's the kind of game that is going to capture a lot of people. And the polish and the music and the graphics and art that it has, I think it's a really special game. So I'm looking forward to playing more of it in 2025 when it releases. Go wishlist it today. Next up, I got 2 that I'm going to call sequels, but the reality is they're not really sequels. They're just the next game from the developer. We've got Knights in Tight Spaces. Okay, so this is a follow-up game to Fights in Tight Spaces, which is actually one of my favorite deck-building tactics games of all time. I think it's incredibly underrated. I love the art style and the animations in the game, and the deck building was fun, whereas I think the tactics were heavier there than the deck building components. But Knights in Tight Spaces is now the sequel, I suppose, but really just the next game from the developer, where we are going to be playing as multiple knights in tight spaces fighting enemies. and doing what needs to happen to get you through some medieval battles. I think it's a really fun twist on the original Fights in Tight Spaces. I think that they've probably learned a lot on what works and what doesn't work with the game. And there's something about navigating the super tight corridors in a tactics game that it just feels really good, man. And I'm excited to check this one out when it releases. The second sequel that I want to look at that isn't really a sequel is Winnie's Hole, which is arguably one of the worst names for a game of all time. I think it's hilarious, but I had a lot of people that were super pissed at me when I made a video on this one. This is the next game from the developers of Ring of Pain, which is a brilliant, brilliant little roguelike if you haven't seen it. A extremely difficult game, but one that I feel like the more you play it, the more you just understand and get it. And I know that that's the same for every game, but Ring of Pain, it clicks at some point, and then you realize how brilliant the game is. And Winnie's Hole already feels the same way, where there's deep strategy in the game that I'm not sure anybody even understands yet from the demo. It's more of a deck building game than Ring of Pain was, but there's also some Tetris-y strategy in the way that you're placing blocks within Winnie the Pooh's guts to continue to infect him with viruses. When you say it out loud, it sounds insane, but I think that it's a brilliant idea for a game. I think the theme is actually fantastic, and I think that a lot of people are going to come around to it, and it's one of those games that the clickbait is just too great, so people will cover it, people will see it, people will play it, and then they're going to catch you with the amazing gameplay as well, because it is a lot of fun. The demo is really good. I've done a video of it on the channel. So I'm excited. Anything by the Ring of Pain devs, they know how to make games. So I'm excited to see the next iteration from them. I got two other small games in the roguelike genre that I'm super excited for this year. First one being He Is Coming. And He Is Coming, don't worry, the game is coming. This is a kind of bite-sized auto-battler style of roguelike. That's very minimalistic in its graphics and its appearance, but the gameplay is surprisingly deep and fun. You're kind of navigating a world and continuing to collect gear and upgrades that you should be tailoring towards the boss fight that you know is coming. And as you continue to grow and improve your character, you're dealing with the events in the environment and building up synergies around your build that allow you to take out those bosses. It's a very simple game, but there's a lot of unlocks and a lot of just builds that you can do that I think the simplicity of it makes it as charming as what it can be. And I love the pixel arty graphics. I'm a sucker for the super basic pixel art for games. So I'm excited for this one. Probably like the lowest of the list so far in terms of like what you would have expected from this video. But I think it's important to show those kinds of games off. And just because it's small pixel art graphics does not mean that the game is not going to be still a really exciting and unique entry into the roguelike genre in 2025. So He Is Coming, don't worry, and I will be playing it. And the last game I have in the roguelike genre is actually another auto-battler game, but it's an auto-battler deck builder, Become the Moon. This is a game that we checked out, I think last year. It might have even been the year before that we checked it out. But this is a game that is very similar to like a single-player Super Auto Pets, but with a lot more deck building and just manipulation of all of the different pieces that you have. It's an extremely complex game that hurt my brain a lot when I played the demo of it a long time ago, but I do think that it's shaping up to be a fascinating merge of deck builder and auto battler for the roguelike genre. And I think the full release is going to be excellent. I've seen they've had a bunch of other demos, new characters, new mechanics, new ideas, and it's a really polished game that's coming soon. I'm not sure that it actually has a release date attached to it, but I do believe it's coming in 2025. So keep your eyes peeled. I think this is one you're going to want to play. So that's our roguelikes. Let's move on. Let's talk about 2 puzzle games that I'm excited for in 2025. First one being Blueprints. So Blueprints, it kind of is the perfect game to go from roguelikes into puzzle games because it is technically a roguelike, even though it doesn't feel like it. It's a game that kind of pronounces itself as a roguelike puzzle game where every day that you spend inside of this big manor, the walls are changing, the world is changing, and you have to solve puzzles to try to get through to the end of the run. It's a fascinating meld of roguelike and puzzle, which are 2 genres that typically do not meld very well together. We did a video of it last year on the demo, and there's so much going on in this game. And I think that it's going to be very, very interesting to see where the full release of it goes, because they're already doing some crazy, crazy stuff just in the demo. And people have almost beaten the entire game in the demo because of certain mechanics and things, and I just don't want to spoil any of it. This is going to be a really, really interesting game, and one of those ones that will be truly an experience to check out and play. So add it to your wish list, pick it up when it comes out, and then don't watch any of the content because you'll get spoiled like to the moon and back for it. So it's gonna be good. And the other puzzle game that I want to check out in 2025 is Strange Jigsaws, which is a new game from the developer that made 20 Little Mazes. If you have heard of 20 Little Mazes, this is it's literally just a mazes game. It's little mazes that have different mechanics and different ideas to them. And it's a really charming little like hour and a half for that game. It's a free game. You can go and you can check it out. I haven't actually made a video on it, but I'm going to at some point. This Strange Jigsaws is their next game, and it's basically just a game of strange jigsaw puzzles. And I think that they are really good at taking a mechanic like a maze, like a jigsaw puzzle, and turning it into something that is truly an experience to play, right? The puzzle section of this video is apparently the experiences part of the video, where I just think it's going to be one of those fascinating little ideas to check out. So I love minimalistic, abstract games, and that's exactly what Strange Jigsaws is. So I'm excited to check it out. Now we hop into the food and farming section of the video, where I do have 4 games that are related to food and or farming that may have some meld into some other genres, but I feel like this is the best way to encapsulate all of them. So the first one we have is Pizza Slice, which is a new kind of life simulator game, I guess is the best way of wording it, a tycoon game of sorts. And I secretly love tycoon games. I do not play them a lot on YouTube because they don't typically perform well for me. But Pizza Slice just looks like one of those games that would be charming to play. You know, owning your own little pizzeria and having to go to the market and pick up the ingredients and then make your own pizzas and manage your customers and do everything for the restaurant. All in that first person view that I think makes it feel a lot more personal and a lot more homey. I think it's the kind of game that's going to be the perfect, Friday night, order a pizza in, rainy day outside, and you manage your pizzeria on your computer. I think it's going to be a super cozy game, and I'm excited to check it out. Another game that I could have probably put into the roguelike section of this video is Gnomes, which is a game where you are defending your garden from goblins by basically placing gnomes down that do damage to enemies. And you may be going, Tyler, this is not a farming game. It is, because there's actually a lot of plants and fruits and vegetables that you're going to be planting down to enhance your gnomes or to add difficulty for the goblins that are trying to attack your camp. And it on the surface felt like a very simple game when I checked out the demo last year, but it was actually probably one of my favorite demos that I played in 2024 because there were so many different routes that you can take in the game and a lot of different content ideas in it that when paired together with this tower defense format, the game was actually extremely well balanced and polished and a lot of fun with how the gameplay worked. It has that same minimalistic pixel art style that I love, so I'm excited to check out the full release of it. I think that the game's going to be really good. Now we get into the proper farming games, if you're a farming game person. Another one being a roguelike. We've got another farm roguelike, Rebirth, which is the sequel to another farm roguelike if you've never seen it before. Kind of like a mix between Stardew Valley and a roguelike, right? You're taking energy to plant crops and mine stone and chop down trees and harvest berries, all to try to do like the Luck Be a Landlord, meet your profit by the end of each day, month, week, etc. Another Farm roguelike is fine, okay? I think it's a good game. Another Farm roguelike Rebirth is taking a lot of what was wrong with Another Farm roguelike and fixing it. And you can tell the developer has learned a lot from Another Farm roguelike, and they're enhancing a lot of what's going on in Rebirth now. My only fear is that in a year we're going to get Another Farm roguelike Afterbirth, and then Afterbirth Plus, and then Repentance. And from there on, I'm done with farming roguelikes. But I'm excited for Rebirth. And finally, we have Musgro Farm, which is a game that I checked out last year. It's kind of more of an automation farming game where you are owning a large-scale farm, and you're doing kind of the placement of your fields that have certain crops, and then managing the creation of different resources from that. So maybe you're placing down cabbage and carrots and another type of cabbage, and then you're making coleslaw, right? By having to first cut up all those ingredients and then send it to a packager to make the coleslaw, and then you ship the coleslaw out. And it has kind of that idle game incremental approach to it, where as you're gaining more money, you're upgrading your stuff and you're getting more things. But there's an element of efficient automation to it that turns it into more of like a logistics game than an idle game. And I think that it's a really fascinating idea. And I think there's a lot of games like it, but I love the theming of having it be a farming game. And it reminded me a lot of games like Farmer Was Replaced from last year. And I think it's just going to be really good. We played the demo. It was super solid. And there's a lot to kind of unpack in it for a full release. So I'm excited to check that one out when it comes. So now we move into the big four, right? The big kahunas of the year for me, the 4 games that I am the most excited for. And each one is like a little different than the previous, all of them being pseudo sequels to games that have already come out. Let's start with Lingo 2, okay? We talked about puzzle games. Lingo was obviously my game of the year last year. Lingo 2 is the sequel to Lingo, so it's just more Lingo. And there's new ideas, new mechanics, a new engine for the game, a new soundtrack for the game, thank God. And we've already played the demo of Lingo 2. It's more Lingo. I don't know how else to say it. And when Lingo was my game of the year, what could be bad about more Lingo, man? So I'm excited for Lingo 2. I think it's going to be as good as Lingo 1, if not more, right? And I think it's just one of those puzzle games that everybody should play. I can't speak highly enough about Lingo. So check it out, and then check out 2 when it releases. The next sequel we have is Slay the Spire 2, okay? It's the sequel to Slay the Spire. I have 400 hours in Slay the Spire. I own the board game of Slay the Spire. I have bought Slay the Spire for, I think, 5 different people at this point. I love the game. What's there to say? It's the greatest deck-building roguelike of all time. Slay the Spire 2 is shaping up to be another brilliant rendition of Slay the Spire. New cards, new characters, new enemies. And I'm hoping that they elevate everything in it from Slay the Spire 1. I think there's a lot that the developers have learned from the first game, and I think that they're going to make the second game even better than the first game. I have fears that they're not going to like super change things. I think there definitely needs to be some new mechanics in Slay the Spire 2 to really drive the difference between the 2 games. But I have all the faith in the universe in Megacrit. I think that they're going to knock it out of the park with Slay the Spire 2. And I just want to get my hands on it, man. I really do. It's easily one of my most anticipated games of not just 2025, but like all time. when it got announced, I never even expected Slay the Spire 2 to get announced. So yeah, it's gonna be good. Then we have another sequel, Streets of Rogue 2. Okay, this is the sequel to Streets of Rogue. Last year, I actually did a bit for this game in the Convergence Game Showcase, which was a big indie game showcase that occurred in September of last year. It was super awesome to get to work with them on that and showcase some of the new stuff in Streets of Rogue 2. It's going to be more of a sandbox game than a roguelike. It is also a roguelike, but it'll be more of a sandboxy roguelike where you can really do whatever you want in the game with a lot of different classes and different enemies and mechanics, where it's going to be fun to see the content that comes out of it. And I think that people are going to get really lost in the world that Streets of Rogue 2 is providing. The developer's been working on it for a while, and it's shaping up to be really special. So I'm excited to get my hands on it and start messing around and breaking stuff in the game, because there's going to be some really fun things going on there. And then finally, I have what I think is my most anticipated game of the year, and it changes between Slay the Spire 2, Lingo 2, and this one. It is Silksong. It's not Silksong. It's Mewgenics. Okay, this is the new game from Edmund McMillan, creator of The Binding of Isaac. Obviously, you know me. I love The Binding of Isaac. Mewgenics is his new take on tactical strategy roguelikes. Okay, you're going to be taking cats through a world of tactical battles where you're going to be collecting the cats, breeding the cats, taking care of the cats, and then using them in a bunch of battles. And it's the kind of game that I think is going to really revolutionize the tactical strategy roguelike genre, which it's already felt like it has hit its peak, right? You know, you had Into the Breach, which really kicked off a lot of these games. There's been a lot of spin-offs of Into the Breach, and this game is definitely heavily inspired by Into the Breach. But when you're bringing in the Binding of Isaac style of tons of unlocks and unique items and a lot of manipulation of your environment, the cats having traits, each one being very unique, each run being very different, I see it as really a sequel to The Binding of Isaac in the fact that it's turning Isaac into a strategy game. There's a lot of randomness that those kinds of games don't typically have that I think Mewgenics is going to pour its heart into. So I'm really excited for this one. I think that it's going to be a polarizing game for some people. I think that some people are not going to care for some of the theming in it. I think some people are not going to care for the art in it. I think some people are not going to want to play a strategy tactical game when they're used to a Binding of Isaac fast-paced action style. But for people like me that I love all kinds of roguelikes, this is the dream scenario, is a tactical strategy game from Edmund McMillan. So it's easily one of my most anticipated games of the year, and one that I am super, super excited to get my hands on. So that's a good, 12, 15 games that I'm excited for this year. Gaming continues to just get crazier every single year is the reality. Every year I feel like we're saying, wow, this is the best year of gaming yet. And it's because you have so many developers in the industry at this point. It's as easy as ever to make video games because there's so many resources out there to make them. So we're seeing a huge influx of games, which means that there's a huge influx of terrible games as well. But for every 5 terrible games is one really, really good game. And it's, that's what our channel does, is we go out and we find those really good games and we showcase them and we promote them and we get them into the forefront of society. So I'm excited to play all these games that are in this video for you this year. You can subscribe if you're not. That'll be down below. You can hit the big red button, like the video, leave a comment telling me your favorite game that you saw here or your most anticipated game of the year. And then I'll get back to uploading a new Olexa look every single day of February here. Thanks for watching. As always, liking the video, much appreciated. I'll see you in the next one. Have a good rest of your day. Bye-bye.